The air inside the Kennedy Center felt thick, thicker than usual. It was supposed to be a night of celebration, a national tribute honoring American heroes, veterans, volunteers, teachers, and even political leaders who had touched lives in unseen ways. The event was live on every major TV network. Celebrities, senators, and former presidents were all seated in rows that gleamed under golden lights. Then the camera cut to Tom Hanks, calm, smiling, a beloved face in every home. He stepped up to the mic to introduce the next honoree, Vice President J.D. Vance. But instead of reading from the script, Tom paused. His eyes narrowed slightly. And then he did the unthinkable. "Some people pretend to help Americans, others just use their pain to climb ladders," he said, staring straight at J.D. Vance. Gasps, silence. You could hear the air leave the room. J.D., sitting with his wife and 2 young kids, didn't flinch. He looked ahead, calm, still. Nobody saw this coming. And what happened next, nobody was ready for. Tom's words echoed through the theater. For a second, even the camera crew forgot to move. J.D.'s children looked up at him, confused. His wife gripped his hand. Social media exploded in real time. Did Tom Hanks just go off script? Is he calling out the vice president on live TV? J.D. Vance sat tall in his chair. He didn't interrupt. He didn't leave. He didn't even blink fast. Instead, he did something that shocked the nation even more. He stood up, slowly, respectfully, and walked toward the stage, not in anger, but with a quiet kind of grace. The audience whispered, unsure what was happening. Was this confrontation about to get worse? Tom Hanks seemed stunned. The cue card in his hand trembled. J.D. reached the stage and didn't take the mic. He simply said, loud enough for only Tom and the first row to hear, "You don't know the full story, but I'd be glad to tell it. After this show. With you. Privately." Tom blinked. The camera caught that. Then J.D. turned, waved to the crowd like nothing happened, and sat back down. But the whispers wouldn't stop. Nor would the tears. Not yet. As the event continued, every person in the audience and at home had the same question. Why didn't J.D. fire back? But inside J.D.'s coat pocket was something he hadn't shown anyone that night. A folded, wrinkled letter, handwritten by a young boy named Elijah from East Palestine, Ohio. J.D. had visited Elijah's school months earlier after a nearby chemical spill had made national news. Families were scared. People felt forgotten. J.D. didn't just visit once. He came back 5 times, helped secure emergency funds, set up water stations, hugged crying parents, slept in the same gymnasium with displaced families. That day, Elijah had given him the letter. "Thank you for being the only grown-up who didn't forget us," it read. "I want to be like you when I grow up. But not a politician. A helper." J.D. kept it with him everywhere. It reminded him why he served. So when Tom's words cut deep, J.D. remembered Elijah. And he knew. His dignity mattered more than applause. But just as he thought the moment had passed, Tom Hanks's wife, Rita Wilson, walked backstage, crying, and everything started to unravel. Backstage, Rita Wilson stood with her hand over her mouth. A camera assistant noticed her first, eyes swollen with tears, face pale. She wasn't just reacting to the moment. She looked broken. Tom had gone off script, yes. But Rita knew why. She had seen the pain building in him for weeks. What she didn't expect was how wrong he might have been. Minutes after J.D. sat back down, calm and collected, a quiet conversation buzzed through the control room. "Rita's asking to speak to J.D. privately." The producers hesitated, but with the show's second half on pause for a musical tribute, they agreed. J.D. Vance followed an aide backstage and saw her. She didn't speak at first. She simply handed him a folded photograph. It was worn at the corners. JD opened it slowly. It was a photo of a young Marine in uniform. Rita whispered, "That's my cousin, Tommy. He died in Mosul, and he always said, if he made it back home, he wanted to meet you." JD blinked, confused. She added, "You wrote him a letter in 2016. And just like that, the story turned." JD stood frozen. The noise from the stage felt a world away. Rita pulled out her phone. Scrolling through pictures, she found a snapshot, a wrinkled piece of lined notebook paper, yellowed with time. "Dear Tommy, thank you for fighting when others forget. You matter. You are not invisible. Stay alive. Stay strong. I'm praying for you. J.D. Vance." Rita looked up, her voice cracking. "You didn't know me. You didn't know him. But you wrote him a real letter when he was alone in Iraq, and he kept it in his helmet till the day he died." J.D. closed his eyes. It was coming back now. How he wrote to over 300 soldiers when he was just a Yale law student, feeling powerless, but wanting to do something. Rita held J.D.'s hands, shaking. Tom didn't know. He only saw headlines. I should have told him about this. J.D. didn't say much. He just nodded and quietly said, "I'm sorry for your loss." Then Tom entered the room. He stopped in his tracks when he saw the photo in J.D.'s hands. It was no longer about politics. It was about regret. Tom Hanks didn't speak right away. His mouth opened, then closed. Rita stepped back. She knew this had to come from him. Tom took a deep breath and walked up to J.D., eyes filled with the kind of sorrow that made even the strongest people look small. "I didn't know," Tom said. "That's okay," J.D. replied. "Most people don't." There was no anger in J.D.'s voice, no sarcasm, just quiet, almost painful calm. Tom sat down across from him on the folding chair backstage. "I saw you in the headlines. I thought I knew who you were," Tom admitted. "People often think that," J.D. said. "I used to think that about you too." The silence between them wasn't cold. It was human, uncomfortable, but necessary. Then J.D. did something unexpected. He pulled Elijah's letter out of his pocket, the one from the boy in Ohio. "I keep this with me. It reminds me of why I serve. It reminds me of what matters." Tom read it slowly. His hands trembled. Outside, the orchestra was wrapping up its song. The show would go live again in 60 seconds. But inside that quiet hallway, two men's worlds had shifted forever. The orchestra ended. The applause faded. The host's voice echoed through the grand auditorium. "And now, Vice President J.D. Vance." The spotlight found him again. Except this time, the room wasn't cheering. It was watching, nervous, curious, holding its breath. Tom Hanks stayed backstage. J.D. stepped up to the podium. He looked down at the crowd, not with power, not with pride, but with something softer, something worn, something real. He took a deep breath and gently unfolded Elijah's letter again. No teleprompter, no speechwriters, just paper, ink, and a boy's shaky handwriting. "I wasn't supposed to read this tonight," he said, "but maybe this is the right time after all." He began reading. "Thank you for being the only grown-up who didn't forget us. I want to be like you, not a politician, a helper. Elijah, age 10. The crowd went still. Some covered their mouths. Others lowered their eyes. J.D. paused. "I make mistakes. I've said things I wish I could reword, but I've never forgotten where I came from, and I never will." The room stayed silent, but not cold. Somewhere in the third row, a woman began to cry. The woman who cried in the third row wasn't famous. She wasn't rich. She wasn't even invited. She was Rebecca Martin, a substitute teacher from East Palestine, Ohio, the same town Elijah was from. A producer had seen her story on local news and brought her in as a last-minute guest. No one expected her tears to be seen by millions. After J.D. finished reading the letter, he looked out and noticed her trembling hands. He paused his speech, just looked at her. "You're from East Palestine, aren't you?" he asked softly, into the mic. She nodded. The cameras zoomed in. Everyone leaned forward. "Did Elijah make it out okay?" J.D. asked. Rebecca wiped her eyes. "He did. He still keeps your photo taped to his lunchbox." The crowd gasped. J.D. smiled, but you could tell it hurt. His voice cracked just slightly as he responded. "Tell him I said I'm proud of him, and I haven't forgotten." The silence after that was holy. What started as a televised scandal had become something else, something that felt like truth. And in that moment, even the most skeptical viewers started to wonder, did we get J.D. Vance wrong all along? By the time J.D. stepped down from the podium, Twitter was melting. Chudak Tom vs. J.D. Elijah's letter. J.D. Vance was right. People were crying in their living rooms. One woman in Detroit tweeted, "I judged him, I really did. But that wasn't politics, that was love." Meanwhile, backstage, Tom Hanks sat staring at a monitor, watching J.D.'s speech in real time. He looked down at his lap where he held a worn-out envelope. The original letter J.D. had written to Tommy, the Marine Rita's cousin who never made it back. He whispered something only Rita heard. "I got this wrong, so wrong." She touched his arm, nodding through her own tears. Then, breaking every protocol of the show, Tom walked back on stage before the next guest could be introduced. J.D. was still at the edge of the platform. Their eyes met. The crowd gasped again. Tom took the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, I owe you all an apology." Cameras snapped. Phones recorded. The moment had shifted again, and this time it would go viral for all the right reasons. The spotlight hit Tom Hanks again. Nobody planned this. He took the mic with shaky hands, and his voice broke before he even spoke. "I owe this man an apology, not just because I misunderstood him, but because I helped others misunderstand him too." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed like fireworks. Tom turned toward J.D., eyes glistening. "I thought I was standing up for what was right," he said. "But I forgot something. Sometimes the people who fight the quietest battles are the ones carrying the heaviest loads." The room was silent. The kind of silence you only hear when hearts are breaking wide open. J.D. didn't speak. He simply nodded once, humbly. Tom continued, "I judged you by tweets, by headlines. I never looked at what you actually did. And for that, I am truly sorry." And then, in a moment, nobody expected, Tom stepped forward and hugged him. A full, fatherly hug, firm, real, no acting. And the audience? They stood up, not just to clap. Some stood because their knees buckled under the weight of emotion. It was no longer a feud. It was a national healing. That night, after the broadcast ended, J.D. sat in his hotel room, tie undone, shoes off, the world still spinning. His phone lit up. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, until he saw the name. Elijah's mom. J.D.'s breath caught. "Hello?" he answered. The voice on the other end was soft and tired. "Mr. Vance, this is Teresa, Elijah's mother." There was a pause. J.D. could hear her sniffling. "He watched you on TV tonight. He cried. He said, 'Mom,' he remembered me." J.D. closed his eyes. His throat tightened. Teresa continued, "You saved my son when he wanted to give up. That letter? He slept with it under his pillow for months. He believed you saw him, even when the world didn't." J.D. whispered, "Thank you. Please tell him. I did see him. I always will." Teresa hesitated, then said, "He wants to meet you." And in that moment, it didn't matter who was vice president or who was famous. It was just a man and a boy who had never met, but saved each other in different ways. J.D. said, "Set the time and place. I'll be there. 3 days later, J.D. Vance walked into a quiet coffee shop in East Palestine, Ohio. No cameras, no staffers, just him. And there, sitting nervously in the corner with a chocolate milkshake, was Elijah. His hands fidgeted with the edge of a napkin. His eyes were wide but hopeful. J.D. walked over, smiled gently, and said, "Elijah." The boy stood. "You're really here?" J.D. knelt to eye level. "I told you I wouldn't forget you." Elijah hugged him, tight. The kind of hug that said thank you for not being a ghost. They talked for over an hour, not about politics, not about speeches, but about school, dreams, bullies, video games. At one point, Elijah asked, "Do you think I could be vice president someday?" J.D. smiled. "I think you could be anything you want." The boy grinned, then said, "I think I just want to help people, like you did." J.D. felt something shift inside him. Because in that moment it wasn't about approval ratings or trending hashtags. It was about one child who felt seen. And sometimes that's all it takes to change the world. Later that night, Tom Hanks sat alone in his hotel room, staring at an old, wrinkled envelope. It had been mailed to him years ago, from a small town in Ohio. He'd never opened it before. It had been tucked away in a drawer, buried under scripts and speeches. But after hugging J.D. on stage, something told him it was time. He slowly peeled it open. Inside was a handwritten note. "Dear Mr. Hanks, my name is J.D. Vance. We've never met, but I've admired you for years. I know you care about people. That's why I'm writing. I grew up in a broken place, but I made it through. Now I fight for the kids still stuck there. All I ask is that you don't forget them too." Tom's hands trembled. He had forgotten. Not just the letter, but the people behind it, the children, the families, the pain. Tears rolled down his cheeks. This wasn't politics anymore. It was about real people who never had a voice, until J.D. Vance stepped in. Tom whispered, "How did I miss this?" 3 days after their coffee shop meeting, J.D. kept his promise. He showed up, unannounced, at Elijah's school. The classroom fell silent as the Vice President of the United States stepped through the door. No cameras, no press, just a man with a message. Elijah's eyes lit up. "You really came." J.D. smiled and nodded. "Told you I would." The teacher, Mrs. Lang, was stunned. "Mr. Vice President, may I ask why you're here?" J.D. turned to the students and spoke gently. "Because I once sat in a room like this. I was a scared kid just trying to survive. And I want every one of you to know, you matter. Your story matters. And you're never alone." One girl raised her hand, voice barely above a whisper. "But we're just kids." J.D. knelt beside her. "And that's exactly why I'm here. Because when the world forgets you, someone has to remember." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even the teacher wiped her face. And as J.D. left, he whispered to Elijah, "You're not just a kid from Ohio. You're the future." The footage wasn't meant to go viral. A teacher had quietly filmed J.D.'s visit on her phone and posted it with the caption, "This man didn't come for cameras. He came for our children." Within 12 hours, it had 12 million views. Talk shows, podcasts, and news anchors lit up again. But this time, the conversation had shifted. This wasn't a politician, this was a father figure. Tom Hanks didn't expect to cry, but we all did. Maybe we've judged J.D. Vance too quickly. I saw myself in that classroom. A national poll showed something unbelievable. J.D. Vance's approval rating had jumped 17 points. But more than that, he was now being called the people's vice president. Even celebrities who had once spoken against him started sharing the clip. One post from a pop star read, "I didn't know much about him, but I know what a good man looks like." And Tom? He reposted the video with just 5 words. Real leaders don't need scripts. 3 days before his scheduled address at the Capitol, J.D. Vance received a call. It was from someone Tom Hanks hadn't spoken to in years. Her voice shook. "I didn't know if I should call, but Tom's not okay." J.D. paused. "Why me?" She answered, "Because after what happened on that stage, he's been searching for something. And I think he believes you have it." That night, J.D. showed up at a small home tucked in Los Angeles. Tom opened the door. No security, no cameras. Just 2 men, once strangers, now bound by something deeper than politics. Tom sighed. "I grew up thinking I had to act like I cared. But you just do." J.D. sat down across from him. "We've both seen pain, but it's what we do with it that matters." Tom handed J.D. something from a drawer. A second letter, one J.D. had never seen. Written by J.D.'s mother. "My boy's not perfect, but he's kind. If anyone reads this, please give him a chance." J.D. froze. He hadn't seen her handwriting in over 20 years. And now, the world would finally understand why he fought so hard. For kids like him. The Capitol was packed. Millions watched from home, some still skeptical, others quietly hopeful. Vice President J.D. Vance stood before the nation. He held the letter from his mother in one hand, and nothing scripted in the other. He looked into the cameras and began. "I've been called many things. Hillbilly, politician, pawn. But before all that, I was a scared boy hiding behind a broken door, praying someone would see me. My mother wrote a letter hoping I'd become something. Tonight I read it. Not for me, but for every child who thinks they're invisible." Tears welled up in the audience. He continued, "Tom Hanks didn't attack me. He reminded me of the power of story and the danger of forgetting where we come from. So today, I'm launching a new national initiative, not for politics, but for the kids we've forgotten." He called it the Letter Project, a program inviting children to write their own future. He ended with a single sentence. "We don't need perfect leaders. We need leaders who remember what it's like to be forgotten." The room stood. Every senator, every staffer, even those who once doubted, now clapped through tears. The video of J.D.'s speech hit 50 million views in under 48 hours. But it wasn't just trending. It was healing people. Letters poured in from every corner of the country. Children in shelters, foster care, or forgotten homes, sharing dreams, drawings, and thanks. Even Tom Hanks posted one final video. He faced the camera with glassy eyes. "I went looking for a story, and what I found was a hero named J.D. Vance." He paused. "This isn't about left or right. It's about right or wrong. And J.D. got it right." Weeks later, J.D. visited a small town in West Virginia. He walked into a school and kids ran toward him, not because he was famous, but because he listened. A little girl hugged him and whispered, "You made me feel real." And in that moment, J.D. didn't feel like a vice president. He felt like a son, a father, and a voice that would never stop fighting for those too small to fight for themselves. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll just yet. Tell us in the comments, what part made you cry the most? Did you see J.D. differently after this? Let's talk about it below. If you felt even a little inspired, hit that like button. And if you believe in stories that can heal, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional, real-life political journeys that show the heart behind the headlines. Let's keep this conversation going, because sometimes one story can change how the world sees everything.